The door slammed open before the class even noticed. The room's chatter faltered as the woman stepped inside, strong, composed, medals gleaming on her chest. The teacher turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "What is this disruption?" she asked, voice tight but controlled. The teacher's gaze flicked toward the girl standing near the door, face pale and trembling. "She's been disruptive all morning," the teacher snapped. "I've asked her to leave." The woman's eyes locked on the teacher, calm but fierce. "Disruptive? You mean she asked a question, didn't she?" The teacher shifted, trying to maintain authority. "It's not about questions. It's about respect and order." The mother's voice lowered, unwavering. "Respect isn't demanded by fear or exclusion." A tense silence fell. Students watched, unsure what would come next. The teacher's jaw tightened. "I'm responsible for this classroom. If she can't follow the rules—" "She deserves to be heard," the mother interrupted quietly but firmly. "And she deserves dignity, just like every student here." The teacher's confident posture faltered. She glanced at the girl, then back at the mother. "I'm not here to argue," the mother said. "I'm here to remind you that respect is earned through fairness, not power." A flicker of uncertainty crossed the teacher's face, barely masked. The classroom shifted, a subtle crack in the facade of control. The mother turned gently to her daughter. "You stay." The girl's eyes filled with relief and quiet pride. The teacher nodded stiffly, the tension in the room easing but not disappearing. The mother's presence lingered, a reminder that true strength doesn't come from medals or power, but from standing quietly, firmly, for justice. A single nod passed between mother and daughter, saying more than any raised voice could. The room held its breath, the balance of power silently realigned. The classroom was thick with tension as the woman stood firm by the doorway, her presence commanding attention without a word raised in anger. Her military medals caught the light, silent symbols of sacrifice and discipline, but it was the calm steel in her eyes that unsettled the teacher more than any uniform or decoration could. The teacher, caught off guard, tried to reclaim authority with a sharp tone. "This is not a place for disruption," the teacher said, voice strained but still attempting control. "I have asked your daughter to leave because she's been disrespectful to the class and to me." The mother's gaze didn't waver. "Disrespectful?" She asked a question, one that deserved an answer. "Isn't that what education is about?" The teacher's eyes flicked nervously to the students, who were watching the confrontation unfold in stunned silence. "Order and discipline come first. If she can't follow the rules, she can't stay." "Rules," the mother replied softly, "are meant to protect fairness, not silence voices." Her voice was steady, each word carrying the weight of battles fought far beyond this classroom. "Respect isn't forced. It's earned through justice and understanding." The teacher's composure cracked for a brief moment. She glanced at the girl, whose hands trembled slightly, but whose eyes burned with quiet defiance. "You will stay," the mother said firmly, stepping between the girl and the teacher. "And you will be heard." The teacher swallowed hard, the power she wielded now challenged by a quiet strength she couldn't easily dismiss. The room felt charged, a shift in the air as if the scales of authority had begun to tip. Students exchanged looks, some wide-eyed, others nodding subtly. The mother's calm presence was a silent rebuke to years of oppression masked as discipline. A pause settled. The teacher's voice was softer, reluctant. "Fine, but one warning. Any more disruptions? No more silencing." The mother interrupted gently. "Not today, not ever." The girl's relief was visible, a small but fierce flame of pride ignited within her. Her mother's hand found hers, squeezing lightly, a reassurance born of shared strength. The teacher nodded, defeated but contained. The classroom atmosphere shifted from confrontation to fragile truce. The mother's medals gleamed softly in the afternoon light, a reminder that true authority comes not from intimidation, but from standing quietly, unwaveringly, for what is right. A nod passed between mother and daughter, unspoken but profound, a promise that dignity would never be surrendered. The room exhaled, changed. The balance of power had been realigned, not with anger or loud defiance, but through quiet courage and the unyielding demand for justice. The classroom felt heavier now, the air thick with tension and expectation. The woman's presence at the doorway, still strong, unyielding, anchored the moment. Her medals reflected years of sacrifice, but it was the unwavering calm in her eyes that truly held the room captive. The teacher, who had moments before wielded authority like a weapon, now found herself disarmed, caught between protocol and the quiet power that filled the space. "This is a place of learning," the teacher said, voice steadier but edged with defensiveness. "Disruptions cannot be tolerated." The mother's gaze didn't falter. "Asking questions is not a disruption," she replied quietly but firmly. "It is the foundation of learning. What you call disruption is often the voice of those who feel unheard." A murmur ran through the students, a ripple of acknowledgement that grew beneath the surface. The teacher's eyes flicked to her class, some faces nodding subtly, others still uncertain but attentive. "If discipline is ignored," the teacher pressed, "chaos follows. Discipline without fairness breeds resentment," the mother countered. "Respect cannot be demanded. It must be given, earned through justice and understanding." The teacher's posture stiffened. For the first time, her confidence showed cracks beneath the surface. She looked at the girl, whose hands clenched nervously, yet whose eyes shone with something fierce and true. "You will stay," the mother said, stepping protectively beside her daughter. "Because silencing her won't teach respect. It will only teach fear." A long pause settled, the classroom holding its breath. The teacher exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing on her. "Very well," she said quietly. "But this is your final warning." "No more warnings about silence," the mother replied, her voice unwavering. The girl's relief was palpable, a quiet victory that didn't need cheers to resonate. Her mother's steady hand on hers was a lifeline, a shared strength that spoke volumes. The students shifted, the energy changing. Questions once stifled began to stir. The mother's calm authority had rewritten the rules without raising her voice. The medals on her chest gleamed, not as trophies, but as silent witnesses to battles fought beyond this room. Battles for dignity, for respect, for the right to be heard. A subtle nod passed between mother and daughter, a pledge to stand firm, to reclaim space long denied. The classroom exhaled, transformed by the quiet courage that had broken through. Power had shifted, not with noise or fury, but with the strength found in restraint and dignity, and in that silence justice took root. The room felt charged, as if the very air had shifted beneath their feet. The students, once restless and distracted, now sat a little straighter, their eyes flicking between the mother and teacher with a newfound awareness. The tension, thick moments ago, had begun to dissolve into something quieter, something that hummed with possibility. The mother's gaze remained steady on the teacher, unblinking and calm. "When children speak, they deserve to be heard," she said softly, "not punished, not dismissed." The teacher swallowed, the words sinking in heavier than she expected. Her hands tightened briefly on the edge of her desk, a flicker of vulnerability passing over her features. I am responsible for maintaining order." "And order," the mother replied, voice unwavering, "must never come at the expense of justice." The girl, standing beside her mother, inhaled slowly. She looked out over the classroom, faces familiar, some curious, others uncertain. but she stood taller now, buoyed by her mother's quiet strength. A student in the back cleared his throat. Maybe we should listen more instead of just watching. Heads nodded quietly in agreement. The teacher's eyes met the students briefly, a flicker of realization dawning. The mother turned gently to her daughter. "This is your classroom, too. Speak your truth." The girl's voice was soft but clear. "I just want to learn, to be treated fairly." The teacher's defenses fell away, replaced by a hesitant nod. "You'll stay. We'll work on this together." A fragile smile broke across the girl's face, the first in what felt like a long time. Her mother squeezed her hand reassuringly. The classroom had become a space transformed, not by shouting but by listening, not by punishment but by understanding. The balance of power had quietly shifted, and in that shift, hope was born. The classroom was still, yet alive with a new energy, a fragile hope weaving its way through the rows of desks. Marcus's mother stood near the door, her posture unwavering, medals gleaming softly beneath the muted classroom lights. The teacher, once rigid and unyielding, now shifted uneasily, caught between authority and conscience. "I asked you to leave," the teacher said, voice trembling slightly, "because your behavior was disruptive." The mother's eyes locked on hers, calm but firm. "My daughter asked a question deserving an answer. Is that disruption or courage?" Hush fell over the room. The students exchanged glances, the weight of the moment settling over them like a quiet storm. The teacher's lips pressed into a thin line. "Order must be maintained." "Order built on silencing voices is no order at all," the mother replied softly. "Respect is earned through fairness, not fear." The teacher's resolve faltered, her gaze flicking to the girl who stood steady despite the tension. "You will stay," the mother nodded. "Good, because learning begins with being heard." The classroom seemed to breathe, the balance of power shifting quietly but irrevocably. The boy who had once been pushed aside was now present, visible, dignified. No words could capture the depth of that change. It lived in the silence between sentences, the steady gazes, the subtle nods. The mother's presence was a testament. True strength is calm, firm, and unwavering, and in that calm, justice had found its voice. The classroom had transformed, though the walls remained the same. The hum of whispered conversations filled the air, but now there was a different rhythm, one of cautious respect and emerging understanding. Marcus sat at his desk, focused, the weight of judgment replaced by the promise of possibility. The teacher approached, her posture less rigid, eyes softened by a reluctant admission. "Marcus," she said quietly, "your dedication has changed the way I see you. You've proven more than I expected." Marcus met her gaze, calm and steady. "I've always believed in myself." A pause lingered, heavy with unspoken truths. The classroom watched as the power shifted, not through loud confrontation, but through quiet resilience. Later, during a group project, Marcus guided his peers with quiet authority. His voice carried weight, not because it was loud, but because it was grounded in experience and strength. A classmate whispered, "He's different now, confident without needing to prove anything." Marcus smiled softly, the victory in his steady presence. The classroom was no longer a place of limits, but of growth and respect. And Marcus, once dismissed as average, was rewriting the story, one quiet, determined step at a time. The classroom had changed, though the walls remained the same. The murmurs of whispered conversations now carried a different tone, less judgment, more curiosity. Students who once ignored Marcus now glanced his way with newfound respect, their expressions mixing surprise and admiration. The air was thick, with an unspoken acknowledgement that something had shifted, subtly but undeniably. Marcus sat at his desk, the scattered notes and textbooks in front of him, a testament to the long nights and relentless dedication that had brought him here. His eyes moved steadily over the pages, absorbing equations and theories, each stroke of his pen marking progress not just in academics, but in his journey of self-belief and perseverance. He was quiet, not out of fear or uncertainty, but because his strength had matured into a calm, confident force. The professor, once cold and dismissive, now approached Marcus's desk with a different demeanor. His footsteps were softer, less authoritative, as if the weight of his earlier judgments had settled on him. "Marcus," he began, voice low but sincere, "I've seen your work, and I have to admit, I underestimated you. Your progress, your dedication, it's impressive." Marcus looked up, meeting the professor's gaze without hesitation. "Thank you," he said simply. His voice carried the steadiness of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone but himself. A pause lingered, heavy with the unsaid. The professor nodded slowly, the hardness in his eyes giving way to reluctant respect. "Keep pushing, Marcus. You're on a path few expected." Around them, other students watched, quietly. Some exchanged glances, a ripple of admiration passing through the room. The subtle power shift was clear. The boy, once labeled average, had reclaimed his space, not through loud defiance, but through persistent, quiet excellence. Later, during a group assignment, Marcus's thoughtful suggestions guided the team through complex problems. His leadership was natural, born not from dominance, but from a steady confidence that inspired trust. As he spoke, his peers leaned in, absorbing his ideas, valuing his perspective. The boy who once struggled to be heard had become a respected voice among his classmates. A classmate whispered to another, "He's not just smarter now, he's stronger, calm. But you can tell he's got fire inside." Marcus caught the comment and smiled softly, a quiet acknowledgement that the real victory was in the respect earned without raising his voice. His presence alone was a statement. Resilience could reshape narratives and break down barriers. The classroom, once a place of limitation and judgment, was now a space of possibility and growth. The journey had not been easy. It was marked by moments of doubt, silent tears, and quiet determination. But each step forward was a testament to the strength found in perseverance and dignity. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Marcus packed his books with calm assurance. A fellow student approached hesitantly, offering a small smile. "Thanks for showing us what's possible." Marcus returned the smile, eyes steady and warm. "We all have more strength than we know. Sometimes we just need to believe it." The sun dipped low outside the window, casting a golden glow over the classroom, a perfect metaphor for transformation and hope. Marcus stood, ready to face whatever came next. His journey was far from over, but with every quiet, determined step, he was rewriting his story. He was no longer just the boy who had been called average. He was a young man, reshaping his future, one steady breath, one thoughtful word, and one measured action at a time. And with that, the classroom was no longer just a room. It was a place where resilience lived, and where voices once silenced now spoke with calm strength. The classroom air had shifted, subtle but undeniable, as Marcus took his place once again at the worn wooden desk. The room was familiar, yet every glance that flicked toward him now held something new, a mixture of surprise, respect, and cautious curiosity. The students who once whispered behind their hands now watched quietly, some nodding, as his steady voice guided discussions with a confidence that was earned, not given. Marcus opened his notebook, its pages filled with equations, sketches, and detailed notes, a testament to countless nights spent wrestling with concepts that once felt beyond reach. His hands moved with purpose, tracing lines and formulas, a quiet rhythm that filled the space around him. He was no longer just a boy, marked by doubt, but a young man shaped by resilience. The professor, who had once dismissed Marcus with a cold glance and a harsh word, approached slowly. His steps were measured, his expression softened by a reluctant acknowledgement. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I've watched your progress. Your work reflects a depth and dedication that I did not expect." Marcus looked up, meeting the professor's eyes with a calm intensity. "Thank you," he replied simply, the weight of those two words carrying years of struggle and determination. A pause stretched between them, heavy with unsaid things, the weight of misjudgment, the possibility of change. The professor nodded slowly. "You've pushed boundaries, not just in your work, but in the way you carry yourself. Keep moving forward." Around them, the classroom seemed to hold its breath. Peers exchanged glances, the old hierarchies fracturing under the quiet force of Marcus's transformation. The boy once overlooked had become a presence impossible to ignore, not because he shouted louder, but because his steadiness demanded attention. Later, during a collaborative project, Marcus's voice carried the calm authority of experience. His suggestions were thoughtful, his leadership subtle, but effective. His teammates listened intently, following his guidance through complex problems with a trust born of consistent reliability. One classmate leaned close to another and whispered, "He's changed. Not just smarter, but stronger. You can see it in how he owns the room." Marcus caught the comment, a small smile touching his lips. He said nothing, letting the shift speak for itself. The victory was quiet but profound. Respect earned through persistence, dignity restored through quiet strength. The classroom, once a place of doubt and dismissal, had become a space of possibility and growth. The journey had been marked by silent battles, unspoken pains, and steadfast resolve. Each small success, each day of showing up, was a brick laid in a foundation of self-worth. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Marcus packed his belongings with calm assurance. A fellow student approached, hesitating but sincere. "You've inspired me to keep going no matter what." Marcus smiled gently, eyes warm and steady. "We all have more strength inside us than we realize. Sometimes it just takes a little faith." Outside, the golden light of the setting sun spilled across the school grounds, painting long shadows that stretched toward a future full of possibility. Marcus stood, ready to meet that future, not as the boy once dismissed as average, but as a young man rewriting his story, step by quiet step. In that steady progression, the classroom was transformed, not just by grades or accolades, but by the quiet resilience of a young man who refused to be defined by others' expectations. His voice, once barely heard, now carried the weight of undeniable truth. With every measured breath and thoughtful word, Marcus claimed his place in the world. Calm, confident, and unshaken, Marcus sat quietly at his desk as the classroom buzzed softly around him. The murmurs had shifted, no longer filled with doubt or dismissal, but tinged with curiosity and cautious respect. Peers glanced his way, some exchanging subtle nods, others leaning in to catch his quiet words. The boy, once overlooked, had become a presence that demanded attention without raising his voice. The professor approached, his steps measured, expression softer than before. "Marcus," he began, voice low and steady, "I've reviewed your latest work. You've pushed past expectations, not just academically, but in how you carry yourself." Marcus looked up, eyes calm and steady. "Thank you. I'm still learning." A pause hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths and shifting perceptions. The classroom seemed to hold its breath. The old power dynamics, once rigid and dismissive, softened in the face of Marcus's quiet strength. Later, during A group discussion, Marcus's thoughtful insights, guided the team through complex problems. His voice was steady, his presence commanding without force. The boy once labeled average now led with calm confidence. A classmate whispered, "He's different now, not just smarter, stronger." Marcus smiled softly, letting his steady presence speak louder than any words. The classroom was no longer a place of limits, but a space transformed by resilience and dignity. And with every quiet step forward, Marcus was rewriting not only his own story, but the stories of all who had been underestimated. The classroom hummed with a subtle change, a shift so quiet it almost went unnoticed, except by those who had lived the weight of judgment, who had felt the sting of dismissal every single day. Marcus sat at his desk, a calm figure amid the restless sea of peers. His books lay open, but his mind was already far beyond the pages, navigating a world where respect was no longer something he begged for, but something he quietly commanded. Titi, students around him whispered in low tones, casting curious glances. Some were still caught off guard, unsure how the boy once branded as average had transformed into someone they now regarded with hesitant admiration. Others nodded subtly in recognition, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of what it meant to fight silently against a tide of low expectations. The professor, who had once dismissed Marcus with cold indifference, approached his desk with a different gait now, less rigid, more contemplative. His face bore the marks of reconsideration, and his eyes held a glimmer of respect. "Marcus," he said quietly, careful not to break the fragile calm, "I've seen your work improve beyond what I thought possible. Your dedication is clear." Marcus met the professor's gaze steadily, the quiet strength in his voice steady as well. "Thank you. I've always believed I could do more. I just needed to be given the chance." The professor nodded, his expression softening. "It took me too long to realize that. You've changed how I see not just you, but what potential looks like." Around them, a few students exchanged glances, their whispering hushed but heavy, with acknowledgement. The old hierarchies of judgment and dismissal had begun to crumble under the weight of Marcus's resilience. Later, during a collaborative project, Marcus took a quiet leadership role. His suggestions were thoughtful, his guidance gentle but firm. His teammates listened, drawn not by force but by the consistency and clarity in his voice. The boy, once marginalized, had become an anchor for the group's success. In a corner, two students whispered to each other, "He's not just smarter now, he's stronger. You can see it in the way he holds himself." Marcus caught the words and smiled faintly, a small, private victory that required no announcement. His power was in his composure, in the dignity with which he carried himself through each challenge. The classroom, once a place marked by limits and exclusion, was now a space of possibility. It bore witness to transformation, not just in grades or accolades, but in the quiet reclaiming of respect and space. As the day drew to a close, the sun cast warm light across the desks, painting long shadows that stretched toward a future Marcus was determined to shape. He gathered his books with steady hands, the weight of countless battles easing into a calm confidence. A classmate approached him hesitantly, offering a tentative smile. "You've shown me something important today, that we don't have to stay where people put us." Marcus returned the smile, eyes soft but sure. "We all have strength inside. Sometimes it just takes a little faith to find it." Outside the window, the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, a reminder that endings were just beginnings in disguise. With every measured step, Marcus was writing a new story, not just for himself, but for every quiet voice waiting to be heard. And in that story, resilience was the hero. The classroom had become a silent witness to transformation, not just in the lessons taught, but in the lives quietly reshaped within its walls. Marcus sat at his desk, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, casting long, warm beams. over the scattered papers and textbooks before him. The weight of years, marked by low expectations and whispered doubts, had begun to lift, replaced by a steady confidence that radiated from him, not loud or brash, but undeniable. Around him, the once dismissive murmurs had softened into conversations tinged with respect and curiosity. His peers, many of whom had never imagined Marcus capable of such resolve, now regarded him as a steady presence, a quiet leader whose strength lay in persistence rather than force. The professor, whose sharp words and cold judgment had once threatened to define Marcus's potential, approached with a different posture, one marked by humility and recognition. "Marcus," he began softly, "I have to admit I was wrong to doubt you. Your dedication, your focus, it's changed not just how I see you, but how I understand my role as a teacher." Marcus met his gaze calmly, his voice steady as he replied, "Thank you. It means a lot, but I've always known what I'm capable of. I just needed to be given the chance to show it." The professor nodded, a subtle smile breaking through years of formality. Around them, the classroom seemed to exhale collectively, the rigid hierarchies of judgment shifting imperceptibly as students exchanged looks that spoke of altered perceptions. Later, during a group project, Marcus's voice guided the team with quiet authority. His ideas, carefully crafted and thoughtfully presented, inspired confidence. Where once he had been overlooked, he now held space as a collaborator and mentor, his calm leadership pulling others toward shared success. A classmate whispered to another, "He's not just smart now, he's strong. You can see it in the way he carries himself." Marcus caught the words and allowed himself a small, private smile. His journey had never been about proving others wrong with loud declarations. It was about embodying resilience and reclaiming dignity through steadfast resolve. The classroom, once a crucible of limitations and doubt, had transformed into fertile ground for growth, where voices long silenced began to find their strength. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Marcus gathered his belongings with an assuredness that surprised even him. A fellow student approached hesitantly, offering a shy smile and a simple phrase, "You've shown me it's possible to rise above." Marcus returned the smile with warmth, eyes steady and kind. "We all have more strength inside us than we realize. Sometimes we just need someone to believe in us." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop for a story rewritten through courage and quiet determination. Marcus stepped into the fading light, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, carrying not just his own hopes, but the promise of countless others whose voices had been overlooked. His path was no longer defined by others' doubts, but by his unwavering belief in himself. With every steady step forward, he reshaped not only his story, but the narrative of those who would follow, proving that true strength is often found not in loud triumphs, but in the persistent calm of a heart that refuses to be broken.